Hi. Welcome to another Saturday. I feel like we should have a fireplace burning for these fireside chats. I was going to talk to you tonight, at least I was thinking about it, about sex. And I know that's something most of you are really uncomfortable with. And so consider it your lucky night. We're not going to start there. And the reason I was going to do so, those of you who saw the Magic 101 a few nights ago, remember that I was rather tired. I had spent the 2 days before that doing some really, really big work on humans and human sexuality, something that's been screwed up for a long time. I've spoken to you before about the war between the genders. Now, if there's anybody who doesn't know what that is, very simply, once upon a time, many, many, many thousands of years ago, a man was humiliated by a woman, or a woman was assaulted by a man, something. And later, when that person had children, the man was a little bit less friendly to the girls, the woman a little bit less friendly to the boys. Now, she still loved them as much as a mother can, but she'd look and say, oh, that's a boy. And she was a little more cautious. And as that boy approached puberty and started to act like a man, she would become less friendly and less supportive. Likewise, the man, when his little girl got closer and closer to puberty, more and more a woman, he would remember his pain and be a little less friendly to her. And what would happen is it would create in the little boy a tension. The piece of him that should have gotten healthy energy from mom didn't. And in the little girl, the piece that should have gotten healthy energy from dad didn't, or didn't get enough. And some of those kids, when they grew up, they went out and hurt someone. And it doesn't have to be a single violent moment. It could be, oh, imagine the henpecked husband and the nagging wife who yells at him all the time. Imagine the scared wife and the aggressive husband, the drunk who comes home and beats her. This became very, very common. It got passed down from generation to generation, and over many, many thousands of years. There's some of it in all of us. Everyone who wears a human body has inherited some of this from many, many thousands of years of opposition. And some of it you don't even notice. When I was in Hawaii years ago, I did a lot of counseling. And I had a couple come to me and tell me they wanted help with their marriage. And so I asked the wife a couple of questions, asked the husband a couple of questions. One of the first questions I asked the husband, the wife answered. And I looked at her and I said, thank you. Now, what do you feel about this thing your wife does? And the wife says, well, he feels this. Thank you. Now, what do you feel? And I asked him a third time. And the wife yelled at me. I've already answered that question twice. Do you realize that I asked him? Yeah. Do you realize that you answered? Well, sure, but I know better than he does. You realize that I asked him? Yeah. How about we let him answer? She had a really hard time with that. I saw a television show recently where a reporter was interviewing a woman and said, what do you think about this expenditure by the government? And she said, that's a husband question. I'll have to go home and ask him what I think about that. I have heard just about every married man I've ever met say, as a married man, you can't win an argument. If you're wrong and you lose, then you lose. If you win, you still lose. You simply can't fight. When she says something, you just agree with her. And while that might be considered humorous by some on the surface, when you think about people, traditionally marriages lasted a lifetime. Nowadays, not as much. An improvement. When you think about someone spending a lifetime being yelled at, spending a lifetime being criticized, being demeaned, being abused, being hurt, putting up with the other's abuse, and we abuse the people we care about. It happens. Imagine a lifetime of that. More and more frustration and sadness and hopelessness builds up, and without meaning to, you take that out on your kids. Every one of you who thinks back to your parents can probably remember them fighting, and can probably remember that you ended up getting hurt. Not always physically, sometimes emotionally. It hurts to watch the parents fight. And the kids get hurt when the parents fight. And see, when mom and dad are fighting, mom tends to take it out more on the boy children. And every mom will want to fight me on this. I don't do that. I treat my kids all evenly. But I've worked with thousands of people, literally thousands. And I've watched this again and again. Mom takes it out on the boys. Dad takes it out on the girls. And little girls grow up lacking all the stuff that dad should have given them. Little boys grow up lacking all the stuff mom should have given them. Now, there are rare parents who give their kids everything they need, who get past their own problems. They're very rare. And there are parents who abuse all of their kids, boys or girls. They don't care. So this is going to average out a bit. But, generally speaking, the majority of the population, little girls don't get enough healthy energy from dad, especially when they start growing into puberty and developing secondary sexual characteristics. Little boys don't get enough healthy energy from mom, especially when their voice starts to deepen and they get hair on their face and start looking more like men. And the result is a conflict that has gone on for thousands of years. A conflict that's still going on today. A conflict you can see any time you hear a woman say, all men are pigs. When you hear a man say, oh, you can't trust women. All women lie. Anytime you see a couple fighting, again and again and again in life, you can witness this. If you look back, you can probably remember doing or saying some of these things on your own. Now, those of you who haven't yet been in a relationship, maybe you're more fortunate, since you haven't trampled this territory on your own. You haven't laid down as solid a framework, a bulwark, a defensive position in this ongoing war. But it doesn't matter. What you inherited, phylogenetically, physically, emotionally, and socially, is already there. Now, I said I was going to describe that briefly, and that wasn't exactly brief, but it's important. This conflict, what I call the war between the genders, goes back to a broken piece in human sexuality, physically, emotionally, sexually, socially. It's been broken for more than 100,000 years. And we have been working on fixing that. And see, imagine a monkey who is used to climbing around in trees and hanging out in trees and pulling tigers' tails, the things that monkeys do. Imagine if it suddenly found that its back was straighter and its legs a little bit stronger. It would be far more able to walk around on the ground. But it doesn't know anything about walking around the ground. It knows about jumping through the trees and swinging by its arms and its legs and its tail. And it's going to reach for a branch and miss, or jump and jump too far, if its system is suddenly changed. It can't trust its own body anymore. This is a bit what's happening to humans right now. Because this sexual piece inside is being rewritten. I say being on purpose. It's an ongoing process. If someone were to reach in you and completely change something you depended on, you'd break. It would be too much for your system to handle. So the process is started and it's continuing. And each day it's a little bit more. This piece of healing of the broken sexuality, this piece of returning it to where it should have been, where it needs to be. What's going to happen, though, is sometimes you're going to be reaching for a branch and miss, or jump and jump too far. The energies, the emotions, the attitudes that move in you and that motivate you, that give you movement, they're changing. And so everything you've got that's based in those is changing. And if that's abstract, I'll make it simpler. Your physical body, your emotions, and your sexuality are changing. Everybody, whether they like it or not. And so all of the habits, all of the patterns of behavior, the social expressions, these things are changing because what they're based in is changing. And it means you're going to have to learn how to do things in different ways. And it means that things are going to be a little off for a while. So, you can see it might have been useful for me to talk about sexuality because I'm working on this piece. But if you're just learning to climb trees all over again because, we've reshaped your back and legs, you don't need advanced lessons in walking. You need to be reminded how to climb trees now that you're different. It's the same with this. If this sexual piece has been broken or shut down for a long time, and it's starting up, you don't need advanced lessons on sexuality. You need the children's lessons. Now maybe some of you will say, hey, I'm not a child. I don't need child stuff. Here's how it works. You start out as something very, very small, and you grow. And you become a baby, and then a toddler, and a child, and a tween, and a teen, and an adult, and eventually someone old, and then eventually you die. There's a progress. People grow. But see, if at some point you stop that growing, it stops. If a piece of you stopped maturing when you were 5 or 8 or 12, and it hasn't changed since, that piece is still that age. When you go back and fix it, you don't need to treat it like an adult, because it's not. If it's a 5-year-old piece, you have to treat it like it's a 5-year-old, because it is. That part stopped. And for most of you, your sexuality got stopped or screwed up at 5 or 8 or 12. Those are the key ages. And I'm sure there are people out there squawking at my mentioning sexuality and people under whatever their idea of a legal age of consent is. But I'm telling you that humans are physical beings, they're emotional beings, they're sexual beings, and they're social beings. All of those things. And none of them, not one of them, stays completely neutral until you hit 16 or 18 or whatever socially approved of, and then boom, goes to 11. Doesn't happen. Like all the rest of you, it starts very small and it grows. And for most of you, sexuality really began to surface when you were 4 or 5 years old. And it will be small things. You may have gone to your parents and say, where do babies come from? Why do mommy and daddy kiss? That's gross. You may play doctor with a friend, or, little kids who take a bath together might say, why is that person's equipment different than my equipment? And you start to wonder these things. It's not a grown-up sexuality, but this is where your sexuality begins. You start to get curious. You want to touch, you want to explore. And most of you, if you tried this, got yelled at or beaten or otherwise abused for even thinking to ask the questions. I've talked to so many who were playing house with their kid sister or their kid brother when they were 5 or 6 years old, and mom and dad found out. And the idea that a child that age could have sexuality was so disturbing that they beat them with a belt, they yelled at them, they sent them to bed without supper and starved them. There's so much of a fear of sexuality, and it goes back to this war between the genders I've spoken excessively of now, that we take it out on our kids when they express sexuality. Your child is 2. Has she begun to ask any questions about sexuality? Or poke at this at all? So she's noticing already at 2. All right. So, a suggestion right here in the room that it does start early. And it's really about 5 that it sort of clicks on. I've worked with people who've started actually exploring at this point. I worked with a girl who told me at 5 she started taking the neighbor kids in her closet so mom wouldn't catch her, and fooling around. Just touching or kissing. They didn't know what they were doing, but they were exploring. This is actually natural. This is not a dysfunction. Not all kids start this early. Some will start a little later, but most start around this age, wanting to explore and touch. And you, as human beings, all of you, started to get curious around this age. Now, probably just about everyone who hears me say this will have repressed it shortly after that. They'll have gotten yelled at, they'll have gotten beaten, the friends will have made fun of them, they'll be ashamed, their parents were cruel, the people they were fooling around with treated them badly. Some kind of abuse happened and almost everyone shut it down. In a healthy child, this will just be a curiosity and asking questions, touching, looking for information. From 5 to about 8, and around 8 it becomes a little more active. At this age, little boys and little girls are often fooling around or wanting to. It becomes a little closer to adult sexuality. And then around 12, the third age I've given you, this is where people are hitting puberty. Now, admittedly, some hit puberty a little later, some a little earlier, but it's around that point. And at this age, the hormones kick in. And I'm betting just about everybody listening to me has been through puberty. And for those of you who remember it, those hormones are not a gentle experience. It's not like nature takes your hand and gently leads you into a wonderful new world. The hormones rage through your system and you're angry, you're frustrated, you're scared, you're crying, you're out of control. Your body's changing, it's doing all kind of weird things, and everybody starts treating you differently. Part of that's social, but most of it's just biology. A big part of who you are is still animal. And this piece is very much based in the animal. And see, the animal will look at someone who is sexually mature or close and feel attracted. There's no choice. It just happens. And then socially, they'll stop themselves and say, well, that person's too young. Don't think of that. But they feel it. And so little boys or little girls, when they're walking down the street, suddenly they're getting attention they're not used to once, they're 12, 13, 14. Adults who before were just protective older people are suddenly looking at them with somewhat of a predatory instinct, evaluating, studying. It's something I want you to not be angry or judgmental about, because it's not something, the energy itself, that can be helped. Now, somebody who goes around abusing 12 or 13-year-old kids, that's social behavior. That's a problem that can be helped. But the initial attraction, the noticing a body, noticing a person and energy, that's simply part of the biology, and it happens. And it's not one way. You'll find a 12-year-old boy looking at nude magazines and trying to catch a glimpse of their mother or their neighbor or somebody in the shower because they're curious. You'll find a 12-year-old girl staring at men and fantasizing or acting to get attention, flirting. These are behaviors that are woven into the biology. I want you not to feel guilty about them in yourself, and I want you not to feel judgmental about them in others. A 5-year-old who expresses something sexual is a healthy 5-year-old. And parents are going to have to learn how to treat that in a healthy way, instead of responding with fear or anger or panic or aggression. An 8-year-old who fools around with another 8-year-old is a fairly normal and healthy expression. Now, when they explore without guidance, because they know if they talk about it, they'll get in all kinds of trouble, so they're in the gym locker room or up in a tree house or out behind the barn or in the garage, the basement, fooling around. They don't have anyone telling them what's okay and what's not. Kids this age tend to hurt each other. It's not the fault of the kid. What I want you to understand is whether it was your parents yelling at you or beating you or otherwise getting you in trouble for being curious about sexuality, or whether it was your friends making fun of you, or someone you were interested in who ended up treating you badly when you were young, or somebody who hurt you unintentionally, an older child who didn't know any better, or somebody who hurt you on purpose, because there are people who do that. Whatever the reason, every single one of you has places inside that got locked up. Sexual pieces that just froze because they were hurt. And so, understand, I'm not talking about sex. I'm not talking about intercourse between adults. I'm not talking about finding a lover or a partner or how to get along with your spouse. I'm talking about the child pieces inside. And some of you will say, and I've heard some of you say, you've heard some of you say, oh, I'm asexual. I've just shut that piece off. It doesn't even exist. And I understand that. That's a valid response when we're hurt, is to shut something off. I'm telling you, though, that there's energy that's starting at your toes, and it's coming up to the root pump, and it's getting pumped up through the joy center and into your guts. And if you're able to laugh, if you're able to smile, if you're able to cry and feel sad, these are emotions. If you're feeling those emotions, there's energy coming up into the emotional center here in your belly. And if there's energy coming up into that emotional center, there's energy poking at the sexual center, because the sexuality and the emotions are tied together here in the belly. And if you're trying to get your heart online, and if you're an elf path, you're trying to get your heart online. You have to have your heart online to be a green belt. If you're trying to get your heart online, that means there has to be energy in your heart. That means that energy has to get from your toes to your heart. Right? And this isn't like a gas tank. Let me just scoop up some energy and pour it in there. This is more like a light bulb. That energy has to flow. And when you unplug a light bulb, it doesn't run for 10 minutes until it uses up all the energy in there. It stops. That energy has to flow, and it has to keep flowing. All right, between your toes and your heart is your belly. That energy's coming up, it's passing through your guts to get to your heart, which means it's going to pass through your joy center, or it's going to pass around it. It's going to pass through your healthy second chakra, your guts, your castle, or it's going to try and route around it. It's going to pass through the social stage here, through the passion, enthusiasm, excitement, through each of these stages to get up to the heart. And if any of those stages you're clamping down or turning down, let's turn that off, we don't need that. What happens is that energy that's trying to come up is not going to be able to get up to the heart. And your heart's going to flicker like a very weak light bulb instead of shining. You're going to find you have all kinds of trouble getting this online and maintaining it bright and healthy, because the energy's not coming through here. And to come through here, it has to go through your sexuality. Now, you may be able to find a way to do some wiring to get it around, but it's always going to be a clumsy patch. It's going to keep breaking down. The only way for your heart to be healthy and strong. And I'm telling you that this, more than anything else that I have taught in this lifetime, this is the most important. The heart has to be online. If your heart isn't online, you've got nothing. It's the core and the center of everything we do. The reason that we clean up this castle here in the guts, the reason we tune the men and the fen, the reason we work with the calm nodes or clear out the gut muck, the reason we do all this stuff is so that energy can flow through there in a healthy way. This is not the goal here in the guts. This is the goal. Your guts are your own. Your toes are your own. Your emotions are your own. Your heart isn't. In a way that I don't expect any of you to understand. You share one heart with every other human being. When that heart is awake and open and online in both of you, it's not just two hearts beating in tandem. It is a single heart. I don't expect anyone to understand that, really. I'm just expressing it and encourage you to, for now, until you experience it, consider taking my word for it. At least looking for it and seeing, sensing if you can begin to perceive it for yourself. You can either think of a single large universal heart, and every single one of you, your hearts are connected to that and moving in tandem with it. And so by definition connected to and moving in tandem with every other human heart. Or you can think of all of these individual hearts as just being part of one huge complete. So whether you think of a universal heart out there and you're all connected to it, or think of the universal heart that you're part of, it works out the same. You've got one heart. So you get your guts online, you figure out who you are, you understand some integrity and awareness. You can figure out why you're here. And you can begin to do it. And you can have a life with passion and excitement and joy and fun, enthusiasm. You can find yourself getting out of bed saying, I'm happy to be alive. This is incredible. Right? And a lot of cool stuff come from getting the guts online. But really, this is just a supporting role. This is where you're headed. When this is online, the entire color, tone, timbre of the world changes. Everything's different. Everything begins to wake up. For the first time in your lives, you begin to really sense who we are and what we are, and why we're here in this world. The heart is the magic, it's the secret, it's the power, it's the wonder, the mystery, it's all of the amazing things. that this life has to offer. It's what we do here. And the heart cannot be online and healthy and strong and bright while the sexuality is shut down. Because this is between your toes and your heart. That energy comes through there. If this is shut down, it's like having clogged arteries. There are little arteries that feed your heart, and when they get clogged with fat, blood quits flowing and the heart muscle dies and you have a heart attack. And if you're lucky, you get surgery and live. Many people die every year of heart attacks. When you've got the guts shut down, you've got one of two problems going on. One is the blocked arteries. That energy is just not flowing through. It's not getting up to the energetic hearts. Right? The other is that the energy here in the guts is somehow polluted. There's anger, there's bitterness, there's frustration, there's all of the ugliness we were taught tied to sexuality as children. And then every bit of energy you get and try and bring up through here gets tainted by that. Imagine you've a toxic mold growing in the air vents in your house. Every time they blow air, you're breathing the air to keep yourself alive, but with every breath, you're taking in toxic mold spores. Over enough time, it'll make you sick or even kill you. These are the two problems that happen when something's wrong in the guts, and you're trying to bring that energy up to the heart. Either it gets clogged, and the heart never gets strong, or it gets polluted, and the heart gets poisoned. If you want your heart to be healthy and alive and strong, let me say the other side. If you don't want your heart to be healthy and alive and strong, get out of here. Quit wasting everybody's time. This is what we do. The entire purpose here is about the heart and turning that on so you can finally begin to live. You're not even awake until your heart's online. You're just sleepwalking through life. You have no sense of who you are and the richness and the power and the amazing things that connect us all until your heart's online. Right? So if you don't want that, just go away. If you do want that, then this has got to be healthy, and this has got to be healthy, and this has got to be healthy, all the way down to your toes where you're bringing in healthy energy. It has to. So, if this is our goal, and the energy has to come up through here to reach our goal, then this is a necessary piece to fix. And this is why I'm talking about sexuality. You cannot say, I'm asexual, I turned that off. You can't. You will never be more than a fractured shadow of your own potential if you have that shut off. And if you say, I hate all men, I hate all women, I'm never dealing with sexuality again, same answer. You will never be more than a fractured shadow of your own amazing potential. This has to work. No choice. This has to work. So, that said, what do you do about it? Alright? I feel like some of you didn't get that. This is what we do. Your life isn't real until your heart's online and healthy. Your heart cannot be online and healthy until your guts are healthy. And guts include emotions and sexuality, among other things. If your emotions or your sexuality are unhealthy, blocked, shut down, poisoned, or immature, you can't get the most amazing gift that life has to offer you. You can't make it through what the elf path is trying to teach you. This has to be cleared of the toxins, fixed so it functions effectively. It has to be allowed to grow up, and it has to be turned all the way on. All right? Now let me just make a little disclaimer here. A little star down the bottom of the page. I'm not talking about sex. Anybody who's past puberty can do that. Anybody can play with your own furry bits or someone else's. I'm talking about sexuality. I'm talking about the piece here. The piece that says, I have this desire. I have this feeling. I'm curious about that. I want to know about that. I'm attracted to this. The piece that makes you want to read an interesting story or look at an interesting picture. Peek at your parents or your neighbor in the shower. This piece everybody has. Now, you may have shut it off as early as 5 years old. So you may not know you have it. You may not believe you have it. But you do. In the same way that you've got a physical heart and physical lungs. You pretty much have to if you're here. I suppose it's possible you could have had a mechanical heart put in, but there's still a heart there pumping blood. There's still lungs there breathing air in and out and circulating it into the blood. These things have to be there. In that same fundamental way, you have to have sexuality. Now, if you've had a complete hysterectomy and had all of the interesting bits taken out inside, if you've been through some accident, had your testicles cut off, some extreme case, you still have this piece inside. Your energy is independent from your physical body. It's woven into it, but you can't, chop off your feet and prevent yourself from grounding. Your energy body still wants to ground. The energy body continues to function, even if the physical body's damaged. I don't care who you are. You have this piece in your belly. You have it. It's there. And if you don't know about it or you don't believe it's there, then you can be sure it's shut down. It's there. So, what you need to do is find it. Find the pain that's around it and begin to forgive it. Start bringing energy in on purpose. You know that you can bring energy and put it in your guts. If somebody's ever said get in your guts, that's what they're talking about, putting your energy in your guts. You can put your energy specifically in your sexual center. All right? I don't even know what it is or what it looks like or what it feels like, but let me just put some energy there on purpose. You can do it. You can bring energy in. And just like any other gut muck, you're going to find that maybe some fear comes up, or some desire, some anger, some frustration, some curiosity, some excitement. These things are going to come up. If they come up and you run away, you're not going to finish. You got to find this piece. You got to start to fix it. You got to clear out the poison. You got to make sure that healthy energy flows through. And if you go the rest of your life without having sex, without thinking about sex, that's okay with me, as long as there's healthy energy moving through there. Now, Roha's been teaching you that you guys have a castle in your guts. It's a metaphor for working with the various centers of energy. And you can use that in that castle center, the same way that you created the joy center at one point, the same way that you image your throne and yourself sitting on it. You can imagine a part of that castle dedicated to sexuality. And it doesn't have to be a whorehouse. It can be a fountain. It can be a beautiful tree. All that matters is it be healthy and strong and bright, and that energy is allowed to flow through. That's all. See, you were afraid I was going to talk about scary stuff like sex. I'm saying forget about sex. If you want to play with it, do it. It can be fun. If you don't. It can be scary. But the sexual center, the energy center inside, this can't be ignored. And what you're going to find when you start bringing it up is bad memories. Mom and dad fighting, somebody yelling at you, another kid picking on you, people calling you names, bad relationships you've had, all kind of things. That's okay. When they come up, you remember them, you feel them, you forgive the people involved, and you just take that energy and you ground it. Then you bring some more energy in. Something else comes up, you ground that, you bring some more energy in. And whatever it looks like now, if it's a mud-filled pipe or something, you bring some water in there, you ground it, bring some more in and ground it. Pretty soon you get that mud out and the water's flowing through. And in a very short time you've got healthy energy moving through it. So, I've said that you have to do this. There's no choice. If you want your heart to be healthy and online, you have to get your emotion and sexual center online. That's the first. The second is I want you to understand that this isn't scary. That tied to issues of sexuality, we have bad relationships, bad marriages, childhood sexual abuse, mistreatment from friends, insults, all kind of things tied in there. And those things will come up and you'll say, oh, this is far too scary. It doesn't have to be. Scary things come up, you pay attention to them for a minute, then you forgive, you drop it, you let it go, and you just ground the energies. And when you're ready, you bring some more energy up and some more energy. Day after day, you slowly bring that energy up. You don't have to do a sort of sexual suite where you take that energy and expand it through your whole body. You don't have to. This doesn't have to be a huge center that colors your entire life. It just has to be healthy. And the parts that are there that are unhealthy, you all have them. The parts that are there that are unhealthy are kid pieces. Probably stuck at 5 or 8 or 12. And if you've had bad relationships or bad experiences since then, there may be messiness at some of the later ages. But for the most part, you've got to find the inner 5-year-old, the inner 8-year-old, and reassure them. Basically, you got to take that inner piece to a little older age and then lead it through puberty. Just like you did the inner child, the emotional stuff. Most of you, when you started, your emotional age was 4 or 5 or 8. And you've helped it to grow up. So most of you walk down the street and you look at people's emotional ages and you say, well, they're so young. Because you haven't really realized it, but your own emotional age is growing up. You're walking around the streets as 18 or 20 or 25 emotionally. And that's way older than most of the people out there. And this is all that you have to do here. You have to find that peace and be nice to it. That's all. You don't have to go out and have sex with lots of strangers. You don't have to look at pictures of naked people or movies of things that scare you. You just have to bring energy into here and start to let go of the pain and ground it. Start to forgive. And somewhere in there, there's a sexual piece. I don't know how it will look in your guts. Maybe as a person, maybe as an animal. For some of you, maybe it will be a furry. Right? There will be something in there. You're going to have to find it and meet it and talk to it. And then help it to forgive and let go of the pain and start to grow up a little bit. And because the work I've done has begun to reshape the energies and cause more energy to move, it's going to be affecting you. It's going to be coming up. It's going to be rewriting the energy pathways inside you and stirring up all kinds of feelings and emotions and such you're not used to. If you do this simple process of bringing energy into the sexual center and encouraging it to just pass through there and flow up healthy and bright, you're going to find that all the other stuff isn't a problem. It's only those who are ignoring this or repressing it that are going to run into trouble. Right? It's, imagine a small hose that water's running through. Right? It comes up, it comes out the end, everything's fine. If you take and try and put your thumb over the end of that hose, it's going to spray out in all directions. Now, while that can be fun on a hot summer afternoon, it's not really ideal inside. Those who are trying to press their sexuality down. I don't want to think of that. I don't want to deal with that. I'm a spiritual person and sex is wrong. I don't like sex. Sex is bad. I've been hurt. I don't want to deal with it. Whatever your story you're telling yourself. When you start pressing that down, it's going to start spraying all over and making a mess. You have to do this. Number one. And it's easy. Number two. Right? It's easy. It's just bringing energy in, letting some of the painful stuff go, and helping that piece, however it looks to you, to grow up. That's all. Now, I say that's all. Some of you, when you do this, you're going to find yourself screaming at people, or being angry or frustrated or lost, or acting irrationally, or being scared, or having bad dreams. This stuff is going to happen. Not because the process is difficult, but because somewhere when you were growing up, you took these scary things and you shoved them in there. And when you start bringing energy through, you have to find these scary things and take them back out. They didn't belong there in the first place. Right? So I'm not saying this will be totally without messiness. If you've stuffed messiness in there, there's going to be messiness there. When you find it, try not to take it personal. Just say, oh, that's messiness. Feel it, ground it, let it go. Source it, shape it away. Create what you intend in there. And just as you, hopefully all of you, have created or begun to create a healthy castle image in your guts, in the same way you can create a healthy sexual center in your guts. Again, it can be a fountain or a tree or a whorehouse. It doesn't matter. It can be a playroom with all your favorite kinky toys in it. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about that stuff. For now, just focus on bringing healthy energy in. Recognize that there's going to be a piece, probably between 5 and 12 in all of you, that is very sexual and is very scared. It may be hiding in a bubble if you're a source. It may be locked up in a box if, you're the type to lock things in boxes. It may be hiding in a closet. It may be pretending to be a bunny or a tree. Right? It's not. It's probably going to look like a person and probably like a kid. Again, for some of you, it might look like a furry. I'm okay with that. Right? Just find it. And when you find it, treat it the way you would any little kid. Don't yell at it or be scared of it. Just talk to it, listen to it, guide it, and it will very quickly grow up. It'll grow and become something a little more mature, and a little more, and pretty soon it'll be an amazing young person, and then, a young man or woman, and then an adult. And then, if you want to explore sexuality, you can, and if you don't, you don't have to. If you're already in a sexual relationship, you're going to find that it's healthier, that you enjoy it more, that there's less anger or fear, that you take things less personally, because you've removed the pain and the poison. And my guess is that this process, if you work actively at it, but not all day, just once in a while you think of it and bring some energy in and clear it out, it'll take you 3 to 6 months to really clean it up and get it going. It might take you a year to 18 months to really grow it up to a full adult stage. And that's if you do it, just once in a while. You don't have to put 24 hours a day into this. If you're one of the really determined types who really wants to fix this, and you do put an hour a day into it, you're going to find it happens much faster. You're also going to find the mess comes up much faster because you're digging so deep and so fast. That's okay. Once you dig through it and let the stuff go, it's going to clear out. This is not a lifelong problem. This is not something that's going to cause you trouble forever. It's just like a clogged drain in the kitchen sink. It's just a matter of clearing out the drain, and then run fresh water through it and getting it cleaned out. And if something painful or horrifying happens to you in the future, it might get clogged again. Just as a kitchen sink might get clogged again. When it does, you'll have the experience. I know what that is. And you just feel it and find it and forgive it and let it go. And by that point, this sexual piece inside will be an adult. You can just go into your castle and talk to it and say, what's going on? And it'll say, here's what's going on. It'll tell you how to fix it. Right? So I want you to understand this doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be intimidating. But it's absolutely necessary. Absolutely. There's no other choice. No other way. If you're not willing to face the sexual piece inside, I recommend as strongly as I can that you stop doing energy work. You stop growing up. Because if this is broken or corrupted or stuck, and you're trying to bring that energy up to the heart, you're going to bring toxic energy up. And you're going to make everything far worse. You're better off to shut it down and go live as normal life as you can with none of this meta stuff in it. If you're not willing to fix this piece, don't keep going. It'll poison everything else you do. And the more that you do up here, the more energy is flowing through. And the more the problems will accrue, and the more toxins will get into your system. Right? So this has to be done. If you're not willing to do it, walk away. Has to be done. No choice. Right? But once you can accept that, it's not hard. It's not scary. If you're not sure how to do it, what I've just told you is a good start. Just intend to bring energy into your sexual center. Just bring it in. Encourage it to come in and encourage it to flow through. And any emotional or messiness that comes up, just ground it. Bring more energy in. That's one. Just run an energy. 2, build an image of the sexual center in your castle. And work with it. Make it clean and bright and shiny like you did your joy center at one point. 3, find a representation of your sexual piece inside. Is it a little boy, a little girl, a little gorilla, a bunny, a Japanese girl with cat ears and a tail? Find it. Make friends with it. Help it to heal and help it to grow up. 4, and final, play with it. Every single one of you, whether you'll admit it or not, has had sexual feelings sometime in your life. Something turned you on. Something made you respond. You could have been reading Harry Potter porn or looking at Rule 34 and all the cartoons. Might have just been watching Jessica Rabbit on the big screen. Something made you click. I encourage you to explore that. That's number 4. You don't do that first. But once the energy's moving through and it's kind of there, look back and see what makes you go, ooh, and kind of play with it. Just poke at it a little. You don't got to do a lot, but just kind of look at it. If it makes you happy, it makes you smile, do some more. If it makes you angry or frustrated, then there's more here that needs to be forgiven and let go. You should be able to pull up a sexual feeling, go, ooh, wow, that's cool, that's exciting, without any anger, fear, or frustration. Right? So those 4 are useful steps that you can do. So I suggested to you I was going to try to avoid talking about sex, and I've done so. No talking about sex. We're just talking about the energy center. And for the most part, we're talking about it as little kids. We'll approach this as kids, with enthusiasm and curiosity and a little uncertainty. Not knowing what's there, not being certain. Without expectations. Just go in and explore and play. And while that piece is a kid, the part of you that's an adult will take it by the hand and teach it, guide it, encourage it to do more of the things that you feel are healthy behaviors. Discourage it from violence or manipulation or cruelty or fear, the things that you feel are unhealthy. Just help it to live and breathe and experience in a healthy way. And you'll find it grows up very quickly. And when this happens, if you want, you can totally forget about sexuality. Or You can start sleeping with lots of different people. Or you can find one partner and have sex 12 times a day. I don't care. The expression of the thing isn't important. The health of the thing inside is. Right? So if this is something that makes you uncomfortable or something that you really want, that's okay. Both those extremes are okay. Because it doesn't matter how you express. It doesn't matter what you do, what you say, whether you do it with boys or girls or St. Bernards. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the peace in your guts be healthy. That's all. And when this is healthy and that energy is flowing up to your heart and your heart's online, the energy of the heart, it colors your expression and it colors your emotions. It colors your sexuality and it reshapes your body. So it will circulate back down as well. And all that complicated stuff, is it this, does it go here? That stuff will take care of itself. It's a bit like taking a child and, you feed them well and make sure they get a little exercise, which kids do because they run all over the place. And most of them grow up healthy. It's not something, you don't have to understand what the vena cava is and how it works, or the duodenum, or why there's a sac around the heart, or, you don't have to know all the biology and the function. You just have to give a kid healthy inputs, and most of them grow up healthy. And it's like that here. You don't have to understand all of it. You just have to give it what it needs. Just gently, kindly, patiently. If you feel like it, enthusiastically. Give that piece what it needs and let it grow up. Just make it part of your life. And what expression you take of it after, doesn't matter. Lots or none at all, doesn't matter. If it's scary or something you greatly desire, doesn't matter. Just make this piece healthy. So really, that's all I'm going to say to you tonight. I want you to remember those two things. It has to be done. And it's pretty easy. It's not as scary and difficult and traumatic as you think. You got to do it if you want your heart online. And it's not that scary. You can do it. The tools you have are enough. And it will make all the difference. When you have a solid, healthy stream of energy coming up to your heart all the time, you'll feel more alive, you'll be more energetic, it'll be much easier to be compassionate towards others, you'll be much less frustrated, less grumpy, less impatient, less tired, more enthusiastic, more aware, more awake. It'll happen naturally. You just got to clean this piece up. And if you haven't finished cleaning up all the gut muck, I'm sure some of you haven't, that's okay. You're going to have to do that too. The answer to the emotional stuff, which Ruha calls gut muck, is the same as the answer to the sexual stuff. They both have to be cleaned up. Energy has to be allowed to flow through the channels in healthy ways. Just like everything you've done. Just like the stuff you're going to keep doing. You clean this up, the energy will flow through, your heart will come online and be healthy. Not complicated, you don't have to understand it. Not scary, you don't have to run away from it. Just a few simple tasks, done regularly over the next few months, will allow this to clear and retune and allow the work that we have done to work through you and change you. And you'll find that it's much, much easier, much more gentle, much more fun than you thought it would be. So, that said, as much as possible, enjoy it. Remember to celebrate. And as much as possible, play well with one another. Good night.